Good afternoon, boys and girls, and welcome to episode 138 of Love at First Scent. With me, Persolaise, coming to you live from YouTube, of course, and with the second of the 3 live interviews that I've got lined up for you this week. Now, today's interview is going to leave me feeling very, very conflicted, I think, because regular viewers and readers will be aware that if there's one interest that's more important to me than my love of perfume, it's probably the cinema. I cannot imagine a life without watching and thinking about and writing about films, which is actually why the last few months have been particularly difficult, but never mind. But the subject of today's interview quite uniquely combines the world of the movies with that of fragrance. So I am going to struggle to stop myself from asking him questions about his acting work, but I shall have to do my best, and you will have to help me stay on track. It is such an honor and pleasure for me to be able to introduce him to you. He is the Academy Award nominated star of Can You Ever Forgive Me? He's worked with none other than Martin Scorsese, Francis Ford Coppola, Robert Altman. His credits include The Age of Innocence, Gosford Park, the latest Star Wars film, and of course, With Nail and I. But most importantly to us today, he's also the founder of a very highly regarded perfume brand, Jack Perfume, which released its first scent 6 years ago. So please open a bottle of the finest wine available to humanity and welcome the original perfumed Ponce himself, Richard E. Grant. Richard, thank you very much for being here. And you're either doing a very, very good frozen internet face, or we've had our first internet glitch. So folks, please bear with us, because Richard is coming to us all the way from the Cotswolds, and we'll just give his internet connection a few seconds to sort itself out. Richard, I'm not sure if you can hear me, but we'll let you do whatever it is that you need to do while we're waiting for you to sort yourself out. Give me a shout when you've sorted out your internet connection. Where have people joined in from? We've got. Oh, are you back, sir?
Because you disappeared, I
Yes.
thought that I had to go, and it said here, get closer to the root of the router. So I opened a door, hoping that it's going to improve. But anyway, here I am.
I love the fact, if you ever rewatch this video, I love the fact that when I actually split screen back to you, you've just got this fantastic grin, and it took me a moment to realize that you were frozen. But never mind. Everybody watching, wherever you are, please send good internet thoughts to the south of England and to the Cotswolds, which is where Richard is at the moment, so that we don't have any bugs. We've got Kaylee D, who's saying yippee hello from Portland, Oregon. Very excited for this. I think it's the
Kinid.
film references. Kinid, yeah. Oh yes, sorry. You've got film references galore, I think, are going to be coming at you today. Chang is saying bonjour from Paris. Sabra is joining from Seattle. Oh, Richard, your internet connection is going to be testing our patience today. Peggy is saying good evening, gentlemen. Thea is saying you're looking most theatrical. I suppose that means the both of us. Now, Richard, are you back? Because you're doing another fantastic frozen. Okay, you are back. As long as you keep moving, then I know you're back. Okay. Thanks very much for making the time to join me in our little virtual studio today. We will talk all things perfume and probably throw in a few film questions as well. But to start with, I've got to ask you, as an actor, you do a lot of traveling. I know that you have just come back from some film-related travels. What's the smell that you need to be able to smell in order to say to yourself that you are home? What is the smell of home?
The perfume that I created 6 years ago with the brilliant nose Alienor Massenet, who's based in Paris, called Jack, which is lime, marijuana, and mandarin, the top notes. If I smell that, when I come inside my house, because I've got scented candles of this perfume, then I absolutely know I'm home. But by the same token, I take these candles and scent with me wherever I travel. So I've always got this olfactory atmosphere around me, for want of a better description.
So you take the smell of home with you?
I do, yes. And that's one of the advantages of creating your own perfume, that you can do that.
I'm going to take just this one comment here from Mr. Branch saying it's 1 a.m. here in Singapore. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for staying up and tuning in. I will, of course, want to take as many of your questions as possible for Richard. So actually start sending them in now, and then I will be able to scroll through them and see which ones we can pick out. Now, I don't want to go over ground, Richard, that I'm sure you visited many, many times before, you know, the whole story of how you started the brand, because I'd like to talk a little bit more about the more recent offerings. To those of you watching, if you Google Richard E. Grant, Diary of a Perfumed Ponce, you should be able to find online a really, really wonderful, I think, a series of 4 or 5 articles that I think originally appeared in GQ, if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly, yeah.
Where Richard talks about the process of how he created his brand. You know, interrupt me if I say anything incorrect, but it was almost a way of getting this obsession with smell out of your system. A friend told you that you're going to have to do something about it. And so one thing led to another, and you ended up at the doors of a perfume creation house, and you started collaborating with the perfumer Alienor Massenet, who has made all of your perfumes. But one question that I would say is, back in 2014, before the first Jack launched, did you have any conception, any notion that 6 years down the line you would have 4 perfumes and candles?
Absolutely not, because everybody that advised me that I spoke to in business or who had been in the perfume business already said, you're the equivalent of a 57-year-old man who has no experience of the scent business, trying to release a pop single for the first time. And considering there are 1,200 big brand releases every year, you don't stand a hope in hell. Do not invest your own money. You'll be blown out of the water. You'll lose your own shirt. So I spoke to my accountant and I said, I found out how much it was going to cost to launch scent for the first time. And I said, I've never smoked and I've never drunk in my entire life. What would I have saved in 40 years of adult life by not doing those things? And he gave me a figure and I said, that is what I'm going to invest in my perfume business. He said, my professional advice is you're completely insane. Do not do this. But I think because I've wanted to be an actor since I was a boy, and consciously from the age of 12 onwards, people have said, no, you will never do it. No, you can't do it. So I've had this sort of invisible no tattooed across most people's heads when I meet them. So I think because I got inured and used to that, I thought, well, what have I got to lose? It's money. But this is a passion that I've had since I was a child to make this perfume. So having tried to unsuccessfully make some for a girl I had a mad crush on when I was 12 years old by boiling gardenia and rose petals in sugar water and trying to make them into perfume as a birthday present. 40 years later, I actually did it professionally. And after 6 months of its launch at Liberty in London, it was in profit. So I feel that was something that defied all the odds, as it were. What I didn't anticipate is that it would then it would snowball, and that 6 years later I would have 4 perfumes to the Jack brand name, and that is something that I was completely sideswiped by, and still am. I'm absolutely amazed.
I would have thought being in profit within 6 months is quite an achievement. I mean, I'm no business person, but that sounds very good. Oh, and Richard is doing his waxwork impression again, so we'll just wait a few seconds. I don't know if you can hear me. The problem is I don't know whether you can hear me when this happens, Richard. Now, while we're waiting for the internet to sort itself out again for the connection, what I will do is spray the Richard's latest scent in the Jack Perfume range. And I'm just conscious I may have to repeat myself when Richard comes back online. But I find this the most interesting of the 4 so far. No, we've lost. No, you're back?
Back. It's bizarre. I have no idea.
I've got to ask you though, when you go, do you still hear me speaking?
I don't hear you speaking at all.
Okay.
I just see little circles that go around on the screen.
Just to kind of get things going, I thought we would bring things right up to speed to the present moment with your latest one, which is Richmond. And I was about to spray it, but I find this the most interesting of the 4 so far. And I'm happy to share with you why in a moment, but perhaps while I'm spraying it and smelling it, you could tell us a little bit about the inspiration and what sort of notes you gave to Alienor Massenet when it was being created. Tell us how it came to life.
I've lived across the road from Richmond Park for almost 30 years. And so it's a place that I run in for 4 miles every morning when I'm in London, not away working, and through all the seasons. And it is 2,000 acres of a rural idyll on the edge of the great city of London. And it was the place where King Henry VIII, in between beheading his wives and marrying all of them, used to go hunting, and the deer that are in the park are still the stock from his reign all those centuries ago. So it's got this combination of fern and moss and mud and leather and animal scent, all going through it. So I thought that if I could somehow try and find a way to bottle the romance and the scent of Richmond Park through the year, and my feeling about living there. My daughter was born in Richmond and brought up in the house that I live in. So all of that it's very personal. And I think that more than anything that I've discovered in the business of perfume is that the thing that is the most personal is the thing that then reaches out to people, so that you're not trying to sell them or present them with something that is homogenized or a corporate by committee perfume, as I know some tend to be, from what I've been told. So it's absolutely fits a niche brand and is entirely individual to me. So if people don't like it, I think it's as personal as somebody saying, well, I just don't like that person, or I don't like that actor. And I understand that, because I feel passionately about for and against people that I meet or people that I've seen on screen or on the stage. So that same ethos goes into how I've made perfume, of not trying to compromise or do something that somebody said, well, you can't use those ingredients, or you shouldn't mix this, or it's purely instinctive and from a completely amateur love of scent, which is where I'm coming from. And then the brilliant Alienor Massenet, the professional nose in Paris that I've worked with, in a bottle and balances all right, so that she produces what I am unable to, as an amateur, produce to the same high degree. So I'm indebted to her for this, and I feel I'm very lucky to have formed this great partnership with Alienor.
Now, I've got to ask you something, because I think what I'm responding to the most are the herbal notes. I know we've got ginger here. I know we've got clary sage. But the one thing I must ask you, and feel free to call me completely insane, does anybody tell you that they get a very, very strong sense from this of tomatoes? And I don't mean tomato leaf, but I mean red, tomato. sweet red cherry tomatoes.
Yeah. Nobody has said that, but I absolutely instantly get where you're coming from. So I'm delighted, because it's one of my favorite scents.
Because that is, I mean, you need to be careful sometimes how you describe perfumes, because I can also now imagine a lot of people watching thinking, oh my goodness, that sounds dreadful. I don't want to smell like Heinz ketchup. But I mean this in the most intriguing way. And I've worn this for the last few days. And absolutely, I completely agree with you that it has got that leathery, earthy, animalic sense. But it is just so verdant. It is very convincingly of the sort of wholeness of the outdoors. The sacred and the profane is all in here, isn't it?
Good. Those are magical words to me, what you've just said, because you're so knowledgeable and detailed in your response, whereas for the majority, myself included, you say to somebody, do you like this? And they go, yeah, I love that, or no, I don't like that, but they can't really explain why in the detail that you have just done. So you've made my day saying that. Thank you very, very much.
Well, you're very welcome. What were some of the problems that you encountered making this one with Alienor? Were there some elements that just weren't working that you needed to iron out? What was that process like?
There's always I don't really know the language in which you're supposed to say this technically, but I've always said to Alienor that the base, or the the sort of undercarriage of the scent has to have a kind of wah. And she says, sort of va-va-voom. And I said, yes, I suppose it's that, but it feels more like ah. So she understands how to put in the ha into these scents. So I'm very grateful to her for that. So whatever magical balancing act she does with the crude versions of these things that I make, because I get all the oils and the notes from grass in the south of France, and then mix them together with a pipette on my kitchen table until, trying out variations and try a bit more of this and that, and try and sort of technically write down as much as possible, 3 drops, 5 drops, which is the extent of my technical know-how, and then send these to her, and then she works out what I've done and comes back. So it's a kind of yin and yang yo-yo operation that goes on. So, but
Right,
she's the one who does it.
So you send her a sort of perfume in draft. You don't send her mood boards and pictures of models looking suggestively colorful, whatever. You actually send her a thing that you've made.
I'm too practical for that, because it's the equivalent of I know as an actor, when people say, well, you're walking through the Himalayas and there's a swish of a tiger's tail, and then there'll be this memory of your auntie's lace, dressing gown or whatever. That to me is too hoity-toity, airy-fairy. If somebody says you have walked through a field to get here, it's absolutely covered in cow dung, you've fallen down a hole and you've walked through the door and you're absolutely shattered. Now you can say your first line, I've gone on holiday by mistake, equivalent. That gives me an absolutely practical, hands-on thing that I can understand. Whereas I feel that if I had said to Alienor, it has this quality or it's the color of that, I can do a mood board. And certainly when I was creating the third one, Jack Piccadilly 69, she came to London and came to Fortnum and Mason, where I'd been as a boy, in these leather banquettes, and walked in Piccadilly Circus, where there is this incredible, intoxicating smell to me of diesel and petrol fumes, and I wanted that combined with being in a leather banquette or Earl Grey tea with its bergamot. So that was as mood boardy as I got. But again, as I just explained to you, they were practical things. I could walk her into Piccadilly Circus. She could see, feel, and smell what it was like to be there, and imagine what the excitement was when I was 12 years old and came to Piccadilly Circus from Swaziland. And it was the whole of the Eros statue in the fountain, all steps were covered in hippies, and the smell of patchouli oil was instant. So that, combined with coming up from the underground and the smell of petrol, those were notes that she understood why I wanted them in that scent. So yes, this is a long answer to your short question. Do you actually sit in your own kitchen table and make up a thing first? Yeah, I do that. So that before Alienor even begins, she has a template of what ingredients I like. And if there's something missing, which is then it's her job to come up and find that. In the first, the Jack original, with the top notes of lime, marijuana, and mandarin, oud was the magic ingredient that she put in the base note of that perfume, and I knew nothing about that at that point. Not that I know that much now, but I know what it added to it was the missing element that finally completed that scent. And I had this eureka moment at 2 o'clock in the morning where I'd got that almost but not quite 2 variations or versions of the Jack original that she sent me. And I thought, well, do I just compromise and go, yes, I know, this is great, I love it. But I just knew that it wasn't exactly what I'd imagined in my head. So I mixed these 2 things together, in the middle of the night. And I have that eureka moment of thinking, this is it, this is what I'd imagined. So I called her at 6 o'clock in the morning, London time, and I think it was 7 or 8 o'clock in Paris. And I said, I don't know, je trouve. And she said, calm down. I think she thought somebody had died. And I said, no, can you mix these 2? And 24 hours later, she came back with it. And so that's how it's happened.
Oh, fascinating. Now, you mentioned Swaziland.
Yeah.
And in one of your entries in your diary of your perfumed ponds, you said that actually one of your enduring smell memories is of a gardenia.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm curious. You haven't yet given us a kind of all-out gardenia.
Because you can't. As you must well know, the gardenia is the one flower, and a white flower, that has defied all industrial science to try and extract that and make it into a scent. So up to now, unless you can contradict me, every gardenia scent that's on the market is a synthetic, manufactured, it's a version of. And so for me, the fact that it has never been able to be captured as yet, and I secretly hope that it never does, because for me, if there are holy grails in life, the gardenia is it. Because the fact that it has defied all the science, and they put a man on the moon, and got vehicles to Mars, and vehicles to go down and find the Titanic. The fact that nobody so far has managed to capture what a gardenia is gives me great sort of enjoyment, because I think it's that thing that, I don't know if it's the in Islamic religion, but the idea that nothing on earth can be perfectly made by a human being. It must always have a fault, because otherwise you're suggesting that if you make the perfect rug or perfect scent, that you're on a level with the powers that be. So the fact that the gardenia just defies science so far, I love that quality about it. So I travel in hope, and various people come up to me and they say, "Oh, well, you must smell this, because this is the gardenia perfume that you're talking about." And every time I smelt one, I thought, no, it doesn't even come near.
Right. Okay. So you have sort of smelled some over the years and not been convinced as yet.
No, and I doubt that I ever will be. So because it's still in nature, and I've just been working in Atlanta, in Georgia, where they just grow profusely because of that climate. And just walking past them it's a most olfactory orgasmatron for the nose, if you can put it, unpretentiously, that I've ever come across. So for me, it is the nirvana and the holy grail of it. And I know there's some people, they find it too overpowering, so they don't like it, but they're lost.
True. Now,
do you like it?
We've say again, sorry.
Do you like gardenia?
Yes, although funnily enough, probably my main experience of gardenia is through perfumes that call themselves gardenia perfumes rather than the flower itself. And so, I appreciate some of the perfumes and like some of the perfumes, but as perfumes rather than as representations, photorealistic representations of the flower.
Yeah.
Now, we've mentioned Alienor Massenet a few times. We should talk about her a little bit more. I'm very curious, now that you've sort of established this relationship with her, you've been working with her for over 6 years now. Have you developed a sort of shorthand with her where you can just sort of say, oh, this is where I'm going with my next perfume, and she just kind of gets it a lot faster than she would have 6 years ago?
Most definitely. And I think it's I suppose the equivalent of, my wife and I have been together for 37 years, and we can, very often finish each other's sentences, or if we go to a shop or go to an antiques fair or something, she will know and I will know exactly, without even looking at each other, what we're going to like or what we're going to choose. So I think that to have that relationship with a nose, where you're dealing in abstract and practical and sort of a romantic vision of things, or to have that shorthand is for me like gold dust. Because, and I'll explain exactly what I mean, because Alienor left IFF, the company that she was working for, that I did the first 3 perfumes with, Jack Original, Jack Covent Garden, Jack Piccadilly 69. And then I started working with a new nose at IFF, who I got on very well with, and we never met in real life. We met always on Skype or FaceTime. But and we got quite far, and then I tracked down Alienor, because I knew that there was something that you can't really explain, just a feeling that you feel a connection with somebody, or that somebody gets you, that you only know by the absence of it that it's no longer there and you've got to find it again. So I tracked down Alienor, and she was now working at Simrise, and she instantly agreed to do this Jack Richmond with me, and it was a much faster process to get to the scent that is now there than it was the first time around 6 years ago. And that, I'm sure, is because she understands where I'm coming from, knows my nose, if you like, and what I like and what I don't like, and can interpret things as unwrite downable as the or something. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, absolutely. Now you've worked with some of the most acclaimed directors of all time. You've also directed at least one film yourself. Wawa is the one that comes to mind straight away. I'm just curious, your experience of making these films and working with all of these people, has it informed what sort of a director you've been with Alienor? You know, when you were sort of directing her, when you've been directing her, have you ever found yourself thinking, oh gosh, you know, I better not do such and such a thing that director X did, because I remember that really, really irritated me? Have you sort of taken tips from some of your favorite film directors in your perfume direction?
I have, and that's a great question. And I love that you've asked me that, because I think that more than anything that I have benefited most from my acting career in the last 40 years. And it's the amount of collaboration that somebody allows you to have. So I did 3 films with the late, great Robert Altman: Gossip Park, Pret-a-Porter, and The Player, 2 of which were great successes, and one of which, about the fashion industry, Pret-a-Porter, was a disaster. But the experience of making them was indivisible from each other, because he's very collaborative. And if I said to him, or any actor said to him, you know, can you help me with this part, or how do I do this? He'd say, I don't know, it's you're the actor, that's your job. Surprise me. And what Alienor was very clear about when I first met her, I met her in a restaurant in Sloane Square called Colbert in winter of 2013, and put all these little bottles, things that I'd made, and the raw ingredients of what I wanted on this restaurant table, including marijuana. And she said, oh, I get very clearly where you're coming from and what your nose is. And by asking me what scents I liked, which I'd worn Eau Sauvage, Christian Dior Eau Sauvage since I was 17, and then changed over to Penhaligon's Blenheim Bouquet when I was a waiter in Covent Garden in 1982 as an out-of-work actor after I just recently emigrated. So she knew that the strong citrus notes were the things that guided my nose and my thinking. So she said to me when I said, look, I don't know about the technical side of all of this. I'm coming completely by instinct. And in the same way, when I directed my first film, Wawa, I said, look, I don't know about camera lenses and a this and a that, and it's a 50 or an 80 mil or whatever. And for me, that's not really important. But this is what I want to see, and this is what I want to, how I want to get to this character, or keep far away from them, or you know, be in a steady cam, so it's wobbly scope, or be inside the person's head, or be very remote. It's your job as the professional to get me there so that you achieve that, because I can't presume to know you as a professional cameraman or professional perfume knows how to achieve that. So I suppose there's a long way of saying that collaborating and relying on people's expertise is something that they have that I don't have. But by the same token, each of them said to me, the director of photography on the movie, and Alienor said to me, your passion for this thing is something that you can't manufacture. It's absolutely instinctive or intuitive to the person. And that is as important as having all the technical knowledge. So I took great comfort from that the fact that I haven't a degree in noseology or perfumery or whatever hasn't stopped me from being able to create something, because that creative impulse is, you know, to me, that's like magic. I have no idea where it comes from. I have no idea how I act or how other people act, because it seemed that it's something indefinable. And in the same way, I think scent is that combination where, because I'm not a professional nose, I don't know that you can't mix, like a chef would say, well, you can't put raisins with, I don't know, offal or whatever. So I'm coming at completely from the point of view of trying things out, not knowing what you can and can't mix together. And Alienor said to me that she found that liberating and creative. So it was a good marriage of two opposites, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. It's interesting you mentioned Pret-a-Porter because I actually rewatched it the other day in preparation for this. I always thought Pret-a-Porter was underrated. I mean, okay, it's probably not Altman's greatest film, but I thought it was misunderstood. I liked the fact that it was trying to tackle the sorts of ideas that I don't think you normally have tackled in films. But putting that aside, can you remember, this is really putting you on the spot, can you remember what the very first shot of Pret-a-Porter is? Don't worry if you can't.
Is it, there's a, oh, the very first scene is a traffic jam on
oh. No, you're breaking up there. Because we'll wait for your intro. I don't know if you'll be able to hear me, but for anybody out there who hasn't seen the film or who has seen the film, as far as I can remember, the very first shot is of a poster for Christian Dior's Poison. So the very first shot is it's when Marcello Mastroianni is in the Dior boutique in Moscow before the credits even roll.
Of course it is.
It's and it's Poison, and I'm sure it's, you know, Robert Altman having a little go at the fashion world from the very first shot, saying, you know, Poison. But there are lots and lots of perfume bottles in that film, that's for sure. Okay, at about the sort of half an hour mark, folks, I should say that you are watching episode 138 of Love at First Scent with me, Persolaise, coming live from YouTube, and we have got Richard E. Grant, actor and founder of the brand Jack Perfume, with us. I'm going to start taking some questions from the audience because I know that people are dying to ask questions. Two people sent some questions in advance. One, a regular viewer who couldn't be here today because she's got to be at work. She wanted to know, would you ever create a fragrance for Barbra Streisand? And if so, how do you envision the composition?
Yes, I would. And it would literally sing out of the bottle. Gardenia happens to be her favorite flower. And when after I'd had an amazing dinner with her and spoken to her one-to-one for 2 hours last year at Donna Karen's house in the East Hamptons, I said that, tripping me off the tongue as though this is something that I do regularly. Once and only time in my life I've ever done that. Afterwards, because I have been an obsessive and devoted fan of hers for 50 years, I sent her at enormous expense 50 Gardenia flowers, and I got a very, very nice response from that. So I think that if, you know, the possibility of my creating a scent specifically for Barbra Streisand, it would have to be Gardenia. But she's also an absolutely obsessive rose grower. So I think that it would have to be a rose-based scent. So that's what I would do, with a whole lot of Brooklyn thrown in as the base for that. Oh.
We're liking the sound of this. You know, a Gardenia rose with Brooklyn. This is pretty good. Beverly, there may not be an answer to this question, but Beverly says, what fragrance did you wear when you filmed the brilliant art series in the south of France?
I was wearing, thank you for the question, Beverly. I was wearing Jack Covent Garden, which is rose, orange, ginger, and musk and carrot, because I had recently created that one, and it has such a kind of bright, summery quality that I thought this with the scent that I should go around the south of France wearing. So that is what I wore when I was there.
Oh, and I would second that. Covent Garden is probably my second favorite from the range. I mean, Richmond has gone straight up to being my favorite because I love its oddness, but Covent Garden is just the most delicious citrus. I mean, the orange note in that is just delectable, isn't it? You just want to sink your teeth into it. Everybody's a critic, Richard, and everybody's got a point of view. So Gavin says Barbara Streisand a bit low pitched for Gardenia. She's more a tuberose. So make
Yes.
of that what you will.
I'll go for a tuberose Barbara anytime.
Yeah,
Anytime.
actually, that sounds pretty good as well. Okay.
Absolutely.
Flicking through some questions here just to see what people are asking. This is an interesting one. What Shakespearean characters would you imagine wearing Jack perfumes?
I think that Hamlet would certainly wear the Jack original because of its marijuana top note, because he has to, he lives so much in his head. And there is a quality when you have had some of the wondrous weed and the sense of largesse and, the comedy of life that comes from it, that in order to deal with the situation that he's in, where he feels so paranoid in that Danish court, where his father's been murdered and nobody else suspects that, but he does, and then he gets proof from the ghost. I think having a little out time via a note of marijuana would be extremely helpful to young Hamlet.
So he's not just mad north by northwest. He's actually just smoking something.
He is. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
What a great question. What are some of your favorite perfumes that are not from your own brand? What are some of the perfumes made by other people that you admire?
Thank you for that question. The two that I wore very faithfully from when I was a teenager, Eau Sauvage by Christian Dior, and then from when I was 26 until I was 56, I wore Blenheim Bouquet by Penhaligon's, and I was absolutely faithful as a dog to those two scents.
Now, you made a connection between Blenheim Bouquet earlier and working as a waiter in Covent Garden, and of course Blenheim Bouquet, certainly in its original version, had a beautiful citrus note as well. So I wondered if that was part of some kind of subliminal connection where your Covent Garden scent also had to have a gorgeous citrus note.
It did indeed, and because I've been a waiter there when I was an unemployed actor for 7 months in 1982, after I just emigrated from Swaziland and got to England, the Penhaligon's perfumery was round the corner from Tutton's Brasserie, where I was a waiter. And when I had saved up enough money, because of working as a waiter till 1 o'clock in the morning, serving food, you end up at the end of the day smelling of various foods. So when I went in there and tried these different scents and found Blenheim Bouquet, it was an instant match. And I thought, well, this is going to counteract the food that I'm carrying around on trays every night and lunchtime. So that was the beginning of it. And again, because Covent Garden used to be where the fruit and vegetable market was in the centre of London up until 1974, and was, I suppose, idyllically represented by Cecil Beaton in his design for the movie My Fair Lady. That had such a sort of indelible romantic niche in my brain about this. And I was also intrigued that, talking about the orange note that's in there, that Nell Gwynn, who was a lady of the night and the mistress of King Charles I, she used to sell oranges in the theatre, and he had an affair with her, and then she became one of the first professional female actors, because up until that point, as we know from Shakespearean times onwards and before that, all female parts had to be played by boys, young men, or men. So Nell Gwynn, in honor that she really changed theatre and has allowed the age that we now live in, where Judi Dench and Maggie Smith and Helen Mirren preside as the triumvirate queen of English show business, as it were. An orange note is an homage in Jack Covent Garden to Nell Gwynn. So, and because she worked in Covent Garden, those are the combination of inspirations for why I called it Covent Garden and what the notes are in that scent.
I love the detail that's gone into this. Now, Vladimir wants you to start spilling the dirt. So feel free to take from this question what you will. Vladimir wants to know which of your friends in acting smells the best and which one smells the worst.
Which smells the best? Well, I haven't. Oh, goodness me. Who smells the best? I'm going to be in big trouble here, whoever I say. The worst was somebody who had absolutely terrible breath, like an open grave. So that for me was the worst. But the best, I think, the best. Winona Ryder, when I first worked with her on Dracula, was 19 years old. And she was very, very, she's a very tactile, affectionate person. So I can remember the scent of her neck because I was always having to deal as Anthony Hopkins' sidekick doctor, trying to find out, who had been attacked by Dracula. Necks were very prevalent in that movie. So I suppose I got to smell Winona's neck more than I might have done any other actor in the work that I've done. So I'll say Winona Ryder.
That sounds fine. Now, I would be sort of being very, very dishonest by omission if I didn't ask at least one question about this one particular person, because unless I'm mistaken, you were in the directorial debut of a certain global megastar who may or may not be the Queen Madge herself, Madonna. Now, yes. we're often told that she's a real perfume freak. Can you corroborate this? Is this
absolutely? And she wore. Okay. I mean, I've known her on and off for 30 years since because she used to be great friends with Sandra Bernhard, Sandra and I played husband and wife in a disastrous movie called Hudson Hawk in 1990. And she was the one who introduced me to Madonna. So the first time I met Madonna was on Valentine's night in Madonna's house. So, and it smelt incredible. She loves scented candles, and she, as you know, she's created her own perfume as well. She smells really good.
Okay.
Whatever she's wearing.
We'll say Winona Ryder, Madonna. Now, a few people are asking a very practical question. They'd like to know how they can actually try some of the Jack perfumes. Is there a sort of sample set that people can buy, or a discovery set, anything like that?
Yes, there are miniature 3 ml samples of with a card with the ingredients that if you write into that website that is literally at the bottom there and you request some samples, please put in your postal address, because what I found people do is they say, can I get a sample? And they don't put their postal address. So then I'm going to write back to them and say, please send your postal address. So in order to short circuit that, if you write in and just say, this is your postal address and you would like some samples, I will send them to you.
Brilliant. And in some of the sort of major cities around the world, where are the best places for people to go? I mean, obviously, we know that we can try the work in London, but what are some of the other spots around the globe?
Oh, there are only 2 boutiques in New York. One called Aedes de Venustus, which is now moved to Brooklyn, and the Blue Door on Madison Avenue, and that's in New York. And in Los Angeles, Lucky Scent Perfumery sells it. Otherwise, everything's online.
And folks based in the US will be aware that Lucky Scent usually do a very, very good sample service as well, if it's sort of easier to get it from there. Vladimir says, don't forget to make an incense vampire dark Gary Oldman eau de parfum wrapped in an Eiko Ishioka package.
Brilliant designer.
Those costumes were something else for Bram Stoker's Dracula. Now, this is a question I don't understand, so perhaps you'll be able to explain. What scents would you recommend for Kath and Kim, who you were in a film with?
Okay, Kath and Kim, as you obviously don't know, are 2 housewife and housewife's daughter in a suburb of Melbourne. And they're the equivalent of French and Saunders of Australian television, and absolutely hilarious. And Kath, the mother, has the Barbra Streisand hairdo from A Star Is Born circa 1977. Um, and they are absolutely hilarious. So they would have to have some really daggy, cheap, awful manufactured perfume that they think is great, which you could probably smell in a shopping mall from about 5 meters and have to grab a nose peg for. And they would love me saying this about these two characters that they created. So that I have answered your question.
I need to check them out then. As we sort of head towards the end of this hour, very, very quickly, I love having at least one moment with guests where we play a little game.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, people will have worked out that all of the Jack perfumes so far are in some shape or form linked to London. So I am going to shout out the names of some London areas, and I want you to shout back with the very first smell that comes to your mind for some of these areas. So we'll go Knightsbridge.
Donuts.
Oh. Camden.
Weed.
How about the city?
Steel.
Very good. South Bank.
Roast chestnuts.
Yes, actually, that makes me miss London even more now. Never mind. Moving on. Hampstead.
Oh, mud.
Okay, and three more. Shoreditch.
Designer beer with a beard to dip into it.
Marylebone.
Diesel.
I've got to say, why?
Because the Marylebone Road is so close to that big road that comes past Madame Tussauds, and it's the chief conduit for trucks to go in and out of that part of London. So there's an unmistakable, lovely smell to me of diesel in the air.
Good answer. I love how thought out all of this is. And finally, Greenwich.
Greenwich. Oh my goodness. Because of the Cutty Sark, I always think of the sea. So the smell of the sea, even though it's not in the sea, that is the maritime music. Greenwich is the sea salt to me.
No, I like that. We'll let you have that one. Now, here's a question that Gavin has asked. No, sorry, not Gavin. It's Thea. And perhaps an obvious one that we should have started with. Why the name, Jack?
Because I didn't want to create a perfume that had a pretentious, as an English person, French name for a perfume. And I've obsessively collected bunting and Union Jack flags all my life. And I wanted the bag in which the perfume was sleeved inside the box so that you had something as a keepsake after you'd opened it, with a luggage label attached so that you could personalize it. So I always find it so frustrating that if you wrote a note to somebody on a perfume, the cellophane was then lost. Whereas if you had this little bag inside, you know, a vintage looking bag with a luggage label, you could say to my darling or whatever, oh, thank you so much. And people use the bags for money, the mobile phones, condoms, whatever, change, whatever they like. So that is what I wanted. And again, I was told at the beginning that will cost too much money. Customers will have no interest in that. But that is the thing that people have taken as the signature of the scent. And when I went to the editor of GQ, Dylan Jones at GQ magazine, when he commissioned me to write these articles about starting in the A to Z of starting a business, in my particular case, a perfume business. He said, what are you going to call it? And I said, well, this is the packaging. It's London pillar box red. And this is the bag it's going to come in. He said, well, you have to call it Jack because it's Union Jack. And I said, but is that unisex or unisexy enough? And he said, yes, it is. And he quoted this East End female chef who'd become very celebrated in the East End, who was called Jack. And I thought, well, if Dylan says it's all right, he's at the epicenter of fashion. So I called it Jack, and then had a brilliant graphic designer at Liberty who came up with this Jack sign that's, you know, it's got a sort of cut down the middle.
Slash, yeah.
And then, slash down the middle. So he came up with that. And so that's a long answer to your short question of how Jack came about.
No, that's fine. Now, last few questions. Now, some of you will be aware, Richard, I'm sure you are aware, that in the 90s, Richard wrote and published a really, really wonderful, obviously autobiographical, but a collection of film diaries called With Nails. I dipped into it lately. This is my original copy from the 90s. I sort of read some of the chapters on the films that I know best because I wanted to see how smelly this book is. I wanted to try and see. Now, I can inform you, in case you don't know, that we get our very first smell description. We get our first smell description on page 2. But can you remember what it is?
I have no idea. Of course I don't.
Well,
I'm 63 years old.
This was when you were told that you had to put on weight. So you write, I'd never drunk milk before, and its nausea-inducing nif mixed with weight gain powder requires a nose peg to get it down my gullet.
Absolutely right. I've never eaten dairy. I find it absolutely repellent. I know my friends think that this is completely freakish, but chocolate, cheese, and dairy products literally make me have to leave the room. So that's just, I think that's my genetic disposition, if you like. Yeah. I just can't stand them.
Now, can you remember whose house smelt spaghetti sexy?
Spaghetti sexy? Goodness me, I have no idea. No.
It was Mr. Coppola himself when you went on that mad getaway to
the Napa Valley, rehearsals for Dracula.
And I loved this one as well because it made me wonder how much of the sort of perfume smell side of things you bring into the perfume world. This is in your chapter on Age of Innocence, and in a costume fitting, you pick up some new leather gloves, and the costume assistant, as you say, knowingly widens an eyeball. Now, are people in the film world aware that you're the perfume guy? Are you quite circumspect about it, or do you go in smelling of these Jack perfumes? Do they know that you have this other life? Oh, I think we're having a little bit. Go on. No, go on. No, I think you're back.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go on.
Okay. Just wave if you can't. My father said to me when I was 7 or 8 years old, why are you smelling everything in sight? And I said, because that's what animals do, and because that's how I understand the world. And he said, well, you're not an animal. And I said, well, my teacher says that we are all animals. So he couldn't really argue with that. And so I've touched and literally smelt everything in sight ever since I can remember. And I don't understand why everybody doesn't do that. Animals certainly do that. And he said, yeah, but you don't go up to somebody's crotch and just put your nose in it like dogs and cats do. And I said, well, sometimes I wouldn't mind. Anyway, so I've done that all my life. And it was a result of being observed doing this by the handbag and accessories designer, Anja Heinmarsh, when we were on holiday together as house guests in Mustique 8 years ago. And she took me aside and she said, you touch and you smell everything in sight in a way that I've never seen any other human being do. Are you going to do something about this? And I very seriously said to her, what do you mean psychiatrically? And she said, no. Have you thought of going into making a perfume business? And I felt some relief and embarrassment at the same time because it had been a secret dream of mine for all these years since Betsy Clapp in 1969. So the fact that she took me seriously and then set me on the path of putting me in contact with people who could give me professional advice about how to develop a perfume and start a business. So anybody that has worked with me, I think would invariably tell you, oh yeah, he's that guy that sniffs everything. And I've just finished this job, a Disney series called Loki with Tom Hiddleston in Atlanta. And again, the same thing. People would teasingly smell things ahead of my doing something because they said, we've never seen anybody that smells everything from, walls to doors to car bonnets like you do. So, it's a lifelong habit.
Are you able to reveal who you play in the Loki series?
No, I would love to tell you, but okay. For fear of losing my knees, I can't tell you.
No, that's fine. We don't want you to. We don't want you to lose. But I know at least one person watching who might be curious. Okay, Richard, thank you so much for your time. Thank you, everybody who's been watching and sending questions in. My very last question to you is, which part of London are you going to take us to next with your olfactory creations?
I'm very intrigued by Soho, because the Soho that I knew from the 1960s as a boy, and the Soho that I knew as a young man in my 20s in the 1980s has so transformed into where it has ended up now. And I fear that it's going to be, as the Soho, the smells and the sights and the sounds of it as we knew it are disappearing relatively quickly. So I want to try and capture that in a bottle.
I think you're the man for the job, actually. I think I would like to see what you and Alienor managed to produce. Thank you very much for your time. Good luck with the Loki series. I'm sure that'll be a great thrill watching that, because now that they're moving on to the small screen, as it were. And stay safe and look after yourself, and please keep giving us these beautiful perfumes. And to everybody else, thank you very much indeed for watching. Bye.